So if you're watching via live stream, welcome back for class number 3. If you're here, welcome back for class number 7. I'm glad you guys are back for class 7. Just kidding. All right, 4 people are on right now. I don't know who those 4 people are, but that's okay. So chime in if you're watching live stream. Let me know who's here, even if it's just briefly. Unfortunately, for those of you who are here, we're going to be going over chapters 3 and 4. Hey, Carol. Unfortunately, for those of you who are here, I'm going to be expecting more from you as far as what you contribute to tonight. So, hey there, Rob and Heather. So I apologize beforehand, but I'm going to require more of you tonight. One, because my book is still out on loan, and so I listened to the 2 chapters again, and then I gave in tonight and bought the Kindle version of it, and then reread chapter 3 in addition to listening to it. But I can't have Facebook on my phone to watch comments and have the book on my phone. No. I want you guys to hold on to the books. And maybe this is God doing something. So it's good to be back and to be doing this again. If you have questions, things, please submit them via the chat. And for all of you, we'll see, you guys can text, and you guys can go on Facebook too if you'd rather do that. If you're watching live stream, I tried last week to deal with the reality of doing a hybrid teaching and tried to solve some of the issues about, like, when other people are talking, it's kind of quiet and I'm standing here. Hey, Melissa. That it's kind of quiet when other people are talking, and I set up microphones, but they're here and I'm not going to force them to talk into microphones, and most of them, other than Lauren, didn't want to talk in microphones that much. So I will do my best to relay, hey Michelle, I'll do my best to relay questions, comments, and we have to realize that it's not a perfect system. Hey Lisa, it's not a perfect system, but I think we can still make it work. Okay, so chapters 3 and 4. Somebody just give me, we'll start off easy. Somebody give me the title to chapter 3. Compassion. All right, so as I was talking to Chuck about prior to the start of class tonight, I kind of view the setup of this book as, so pastors are, one of my preaching professors in seminary revealed this fact that I'd never thought of until seminary. He said, basically, there are 6 sermons. There are 6 themes. And you just preach on those 6 themes over and over and over again. That, maybe you have justice, or you have reconciliation, or you have grace, and so this book is kind of organized almost, I see it as, these are sermon topics, if you will. And so with tonight, the 3rd chapter being compassion, you're going to get in that chapter, if you read it, a whole bunch of stories that circle back to the concept of compassion. And he just gives you a whole slew of illustrations of what compassion can look like. The other aspect of it is that he's showing you not just compassion of other individuals learning compassion, he shows you how he learns it too from other individuals. So it's not just a one-way street, he shows you how he is changed by people as well, which I think is really interesting, is a really neat thing. So if anybody else is watching on, so I don't have like alerts on for this. I don't know if anybody else is watching. If you put a question in, hopefully I see it. If I don't, put it in again, okay? And just keep putting in spam the comment section, that's fine. So the title of the chapter is Compassion. As you look through that chapter, Are there any stories in that chapter that stuck out, any examples in that stuck out to you as either just an interesting story, as something that where you learned something, anything? And that's for the people at home. Type it in. Anybody here, you can type it in or raise your hand. So Joanne.
I'm not sure if this answers your question.
Well, I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does, yeah.
It's something that has stuck out for me. He writes that people come to visit him hoping to catch a drop of adult attention.
Uh-huh.
And when he feels it, maybe like when the boy came in saying he got all A's.
Yeah.
And it was the 2 C's, 2
Right.
A's, and an A. And
Right.
he said, oh, yes, congratulations.
Right.
A. Nearly every person, every homeboy that visits him
Right.
ends up crying.
Right.
And I find that a little bit incredulous.
You don't think it's believable? All right. So, now I can't vouch for the veracity of any of that. Yeah, so what Joanne is saying is, so she's highlighted a couple of the stories, or at least one of them from throughout the book, but in the chapter, and talks about how they all end up like breaking and crying when they have these revelations or they have these experiences with Father Greg. And she finds that hard to believe. And that's possible. I wasn't there. I don't know. So you can either go with it and say, yes, counterpoint from husband Lauren. All right, yes, counterpoint.
He may have selected the 20% of criers and the 80% didn't make it in the book.
Yeah, so he might have only chosen the criers to put into the book, is what Lauren's point is. And that could be as well. And I might even let you guys fight that out between one another. I guess my take on that is, without knowing. Now, there is somebody, I believe it's in chapter 4. There's an individual who talks about his father who left the house on his 6th birthday. So we're not there yet. And he talks about how much he cried until he got to a point where he's like, I don't even cry anymore. Kathy, many of us cry, and I'll get back to it. Many of us cry when someone listens to us and we didn't expect it. Yeah. So one of my pastor friends who did an interview with me that's up on this Facebook thing that everyone should check out. Hello, Melanie. Hello, Ralph. He said, he quoted somebody, and I don't remember who he quoted, and I'm probably going to mess up the quote, but it was something to the effect of, I want to get this right, something to the effect of people being heard. For some people, being heard is such a, like they're heard so little, they're listened to so little, that being heard can be confused with being loved. They're synonymous almost, that when somebody actually listens to you and appreciates you, and I really wish I had memorized what he had said, the quote, because it's very interesting when you feel like someone is actually connected with you. And I think I guess my take on it too is for a lot of these individuals, Father Greg is someone that they are comfortable with showing their vulnerability to. And for a lot of these youth, especially for a lot of these youth, they are not able to, in their everyday life, to show weakness, to show vulnerability, and he gives them an environment, a safe space where they can just let everything out. And I would say the other part of it for me, now everybody that comes in my office does not cry. However, I have had that experience where people come in, we're talking about something that I don't think we would be sentimental over. They come in to talk about something, and something triggers in them, and they start crying. I've actually probably heard in my office more, hey Paul, I've heard in my office more people say the comment or something to the effect of, I didn't think I was going to cry, and now I'm crying. And to the point where I now do actually move them out because somebody was crying at another part of the church. But, keeping tissues in my office because, people were crying. So Carol kind of seconds that. Many people they want to be heard. I'm going to raise this, and Joanne, you can let me know, or anybody else can let me know your thoughts on this. This is part of like a premarital counseling thing that when I talk to couples I'm going to be presiding at their wedding, is a difference, a typical difference. It's not 100%. And so this is one of those things like, all right, Jeff, do we say this? It's a stereotype, but it applies fairly well with, so I'll just apply it to myself. So with myself and with my wife, Melissa, who may or may not still be watching this, hi Sue, is when I have a problem and I share a problem with her for my daily life, my hope is to fix the problem. Her approach is she doesn't want to fix the problem. She just wants to be heard for what the problem is. She just wants someone to listen to her and go, wow, that sounds really hard. Now, my instinct is to go, I've located the issue. This is how we solve that. So we can get rid of the pain. No more pain. You're good. And when I do that, what I found, even though I know this in my head, I still mess up on it routinely. When she'll share something and I'll solve the issue. Well, we do this. And then she gets mad at me. You're not listening to me. No, I am listening. You had this problem. I gave you this solution. You are welcome, And it does not, yeah. So I've had to learn, and I have to dial up my natural instinct back to kind of say, all right, you don't want to solve the problem? It doesn't make any sense to me. What's that? No, I have said that, Michelle, because I said I'm not the smartest man in the world. I have said, wait, so we don't? I'm confused because I thought you had a problem, but you don't. But even whether I even mentally go through that, all right, Jeff, this isn't about solving this problem. This is about listening. Yes, yeah, the answer is that very interesting. Well, Melissa is still listening. God bless you. She said, yeah, she goes, no, a lot of times she knows the answer. She knows how to solve it. She just wants empathy. She wants compassion. She wants somebody to be, I'm extrapolating, I'm mansplaining your answer, Melissa. I apologize. But you just want somebody on your side to be like, man, that's horrible. So I think he provides them, and as a pastor, I do this much better as a pastor. Look at all the ladies. Look at all the ladies agreeing with Melissa. God bless you. We get it. I was wrong. But as a pastor, I do this much better. If someone comes in and talks to me, I don't try to give them an answer. I'll sit and listen and go, wow, that sounds really hard. If they ask for advice, I'll try to give it. But that's not my default, is to try to fix it. And I think Father Greg provides these opportunities, sometimes even against his own natural instincts, for people to just completely unload and open themselves up, to listen to people. And I think that I think that can make a big difference in people's lives if you're just there and you just listen Doesn't mean you agree with them. It doesn't mean you necessarily support or want to, promote whatever their issue is. But you're there, and you're just able to be there, to be present. Hey, Nancy, you have my book. I love you, Nancy. She runs a lot of teaches at Messiah, and she runs the homeroom where I'm at. And she's one of my favorite people in the world. She's extremely intelligent and faithful and nice. So I apologize for yelling at you, Nancy. All right. So, but she brought up one of another story in chapter 3, which is and I preached on this. I used this as a sermon illustration about 6 months ago or 9 months ago. The notion of the individuals who they're housing people in the church. And so he gets up one day, as Nancy pointed out, he gets up one day in church, and they do their best to cover up the smell, but there's only so much you can do. I don't know, I forget what the number is, how many homeless guys they have sleeping in the church. And so he's like, what does this place smell like? And their honest answer, which is true, first, their initial take on it is they don't want to say, because they're polite. But then Joanne says, yes, it smells like feet. And why does it smell like feet? Because there's a bunch of stinky guys sleeping in the church. So it smells truly like feet. And then Father Greg does this brilliant thing because, once again, as Chuck and I were talking before the class, I know about Mother Teresa. I haven't read a bunch of stuff about her life. This guy, and encountering him and listening to his different lectures and stuff he's given around the country and watching interviews, he's probably like one of the closest things I've seen to like a true living, I don't want to say living saint because we believe everybody's saints, but somebody who's really he's dialed into what he's supposed to be doing in life. So he does this brilliant thing with the feet. And Nancy, I want to see if you can follow it up. I'm going to let you answer while they're listening. He asks them why they would want to have a bunch of homeless people in their church, knowing that it's going to make their church smell like feet. So Nancy, why do they want homeless people in their church? And it gives you guys a respite while I see if Nancy responds. Nancy, if there's any fear in responding, just know my wife responded and she got a whole bunch of accolades for answering something, so you should be encouraged as well. Here she goes. It does. All right, Nancy, don't jump ahead. I want to know why they want to have homeless people stay in their church. What's the reason for allowing homeless people to stay in their church? Because you gave me the answer that happens after that. There's like a 5-second delay, so there's always. Now you guys get to experience what they experience when I'm listening to you and they can't hear you. This is the difference. Nancy, you're making me look silly. I'm just staring at a phone right now. Yeah, Dale, I heard you. Dale gave the answer. I have way better. It's just the acoustics in this room. Yeah. Yes. So Nancy keeps hinting around the answer and Dale gave, and then Nancy kind of fleshes it out more. So the initial answer, which is the answer to the joking answer to every children's sermon question ever, yes, Nancy, it's what Jesus would do. You and Dale agree. They say, well, it's what Jesus would do. And so since it's what Jesus would do, they say this is what we are committed to doing. Because we're committed to behaving as much like Jesus as we can. And so now instead of it smelling like feet, what does it smell like? This is for anybody. Nancy already gave an answer to it, but I just want to see. Roses and commitment. So let's talk about that story because I love that story. Let's talk about that story just a little bit more to get new battery. What's that? Yeah. It's so they could. There's different approaches they could take, and I'm gonna be changing I have to change my battery in a second. But think about this while I go get new batteries. Think about how, if we are viewing our actions from one motivational point, for one purpose, like one reason why we're doing something, as opposed to we're doing it for a different reason, how that completely changes the outlook of how we view something. So think about that, everybody at home and everybody here. Dale, I won't be able to hear you back here probably, but I'm going to get new batteries. Don't test it though, Dale, because I might be able to. You can talk to each other. It's kind of creepy when it's that quiet out there. All right, bright green light. If you responded online, I won't have seen it because it'll have disappeared from the page already. So if you respond with something, feel free to put it back in there. So for all of us gathered here and those people online, how does having one starting point being over here, this is why we're doing something, versus this is why we're doing something, or at least maybe even reframing it to say, like, having a clear understanding of your mission and what you're doing, why you're doing it, how does that change the outlook of how you see things? Debbie says listening. Okay. Anybody here? Oh, Michelle.
I feel like it moves it out from being about you.
Ooh. So Michelle says it moves it out from being about you. Okay, do you want to say any more about that or no? Not really. Not really? You got the ooh and you're just going to stop there? All right, so Nancy love this post, his comment. Oh, yeah. We're going to get to that, Nancy. If I forget to come back to that, Nancy, put it in there again. Kathy says, I think it makes you less judgmental and resentful. I think so too. So if you know we're doing this for this reason, because as we talked about last week when we talked about the Homeboy Industries and how they measure success versus a regular business, why they might not have the best business practices, that's the same thing here. If your goal for church is to have a pretty, clean, nice-smelling building, you don't invite homeless people to stay inside of it. You don't. Because your priority, your goal, is to have this really, really pristine area. And what I liken it to, even though it's not the exact same thing as this, but it's a topic that came up before class tonight. What I liken it to for us in our community is like Vacation Bible School, which perks up Michelle's ears and Brenda and Chris's ears. That Vacation Bible School can be a terror on the building. We put all kinds of decorations up. You got kids running through here. They're touching everything. They're, eating in places. It's loud. And there are people who I've met, not just in this congregation, but I have met them here. There are people who we leave up the decorations for a week because we want the congregation to see this is what we did. And there are people who look at those decorations and go, why is this garbage still littering our church? Get that crap down. I don't want to see rainforest animals up here. I want to be able to see this. And to me, I look at it and go, now, does that stuff, if you want to get into a debate about it, you could say, well, does that stuff still have to be up there because the kids aren't there? And so is it still serving that purpose? No. But I think that's viewing the decorations from the wrong priority, the wrong starting point. If your priority is to have a super, like I said, super clean, it looks the same every time you come in, then get the decorations down. But if your priority is to say, how are we affecting people's lives, or how are we sharing Jesus' story or God's love with people, then by leaving those decorations up, it gives us a chance to talk about them. It gives us a chance to see, this is what happened. Maybe we had to vacuum a few more times, or we had to help clean this, or we had to order more toilet paper, or I don't know, whatever we have to do. The purpose of it is, we're doing this because it gives us a chance to live out this mission. I think having a clear sense of this is why we're doing this can help us through the tough times of things not always looking perfect. Because ministry is messy. It just is. So another example that Nancy gave, because she's a Gold Star student, is the other story in chapter 3 where he meets the guy who grew up in the area. So we remember the guy drives up in a nice car, and he talks about how he was baptized and he has first communion in the church, and he's in this nice car now. And now he looks and he sees gang members just kind of around the church, and he sees other people, like homeless people, being fed, and he sees this other stuff going on. And Nancy put it in the description already, but I want to see if anyone here can locate it or offer it up. The man makes a comment, and then Father Greg has a zinger right back for him. Okay, so what comment does the man make? This used to be a church. And Father Greg, in his infinite wisdom, responds, how?
I think it's finally.
Yeah. Some people are really, that's interesting, because some people think this is finally a church. So once again, how do we approach what we're doing? Bill, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's funny because the exact same thing's going on in Lorraine. Right now, a group wants to build a shelter, permanent shelter for homeless, and we're upset about it. Well, what's it going to be like? Well, right now it's a vacant lot with 3 broken-down cars sitting across the street from St. Joe's Hospital that is half torn down, and there's nothing but a big pile of rock.
Yeah.
This is really going to affect the neighborhood and run it.
Yeah. This.
The whole concept of that.
Yeah. Have you seen the neighborhood? Yeah. So Bill's saying is, that there's similarity in downtown Lorraine right now. They're talking about building a place, like a permanent homeless shelter, and people are worried what that will do to the community down there, because having a permanent homeless shelter, like what kind of people that invite to the area and all that. I think that's spot on too. So if you have this priority of, obviously the guy in the nice car, his vision of a church should look like or be like or act like is one thing, and Father Greg's and other people in that congregation, their view is a different thing. Do you think it's I don't say is it possible, because all things are possible, not just even quoting scripture there, but all things are possible. What's that? Is it likely, thank you, Joanne, is it likely to get those two sides to commingle and agree, or do you think it comes to a point where you go, the person who thinks church should look like this is probably, and our church looks like this, one side's going to win? Which one's more likely? What's that? One side will win. Yeah. And that's when, I don't want to say it's, because it doesn't happen, for his congregation, for his parish that he's serving, they have a clear enough sense of self-awareness and purpose that having somebody come and complain that there are gang members there and talking about what, like what a shame that this church looks like this now and is doing these things. They have a clear enough sense of self and their identity of who they are as followers of Jesus that they're like, yeah, man, whatever, you're wrong. This is what we do. But what about in congregations that haven't completely decided that yet or have not taken? My experience is most congregations kind of have a foot in each camp where we go, we want to help, we want to do this, we want to extend ourselves this way, but we also still really want this over here. And as long as people are able to make those things coexist, they kind of coexist, but I think when the rubber hits the road, that's I guess a question I'm wondering for all of you and anybody with the live stream too. If a congregation has not already, set itself up as this is who we are, if they're just a regular congregation in most communities that try to do both, do you think one side wins over the other more often than not, or do you think it really is contextual?
I believe it comes down to leadership.
Okay.
The Dolores mission would not be the Dolores mission without Father Greg.
Correct.
And having been somewhat of a church vagabond,
Yeah.
each church is defined by the leadership, whether it's pastoral leadership
Right.
or
Lay.
leadership.
Yeah.
And basically, if you don't agree with the leadership, or the leadership becomes something that you can't agree with,
Mm-hmm.
you vote with your feet.
Right, you do. Yeah, ultimately, either with your feet or with, and I'll fill people in with what Lauren was saying. Your feet, your money, whatever, you vote with these things. So Lauren was saying that a lot of this is defined, which side gets embraced more is defined a lot by leadership. And, the idea that does Dolores' mission look the same without Father Greg there, just leading and being kind of the pulse of that place? And my guess would be no. I agree with you. It would not be definitely exactly like that. And I don't know if they ever would have taken that step without him kind of just being who he is. And that if you can be in, whether that's clergy leadership or whether that's lay leadership, it's something that people you either fall in line with or you vote with your feet, vote with your wallet. And Melissa had, her point was, it doesn't have to have a winner necessarily, but you have to agree to support one another. And I agree with that, but I don't. I agree with, okay, Kathy, I got that too. I agree with it can be like that, but I think, once again, that only works until somebody's toes get stepped on. So as long as I'm not bothering you and you're not bothering me and we support each other and like, you do your thing and I do my thing, but if our things start to clash and one has to win, then yeah, Yeah, it's somebody's is going to be on the side where the congregation is going to pursue one or the other. And in my experience, and Kathy kind of stated this, you have the status quo. If you don't make a decisive action or decision or mission out there, if you don't make it something intentional and decisive, the status quo, it's always existed, wins every time. Like inaction just continues more of the same. And more of the same, and you can disagree with me if you want, you'd be wrong, but you can disagree with me if you want. The status quo of every congregation that's just a generic congregation, the status quo of every congregation is to keep itself alive. It's a living organism. And the thing that living organisms love the most, and I am not good at science, but the thing that living organisms like the most is homeostasis. If there's an intruder coming into the body, you have defense mechanisms to go out there and attack it and to protect yourself against those things. So living organisms like calm. And so that's the default of every congregation, even to the detriment of its own health sometimes. Chuck.
We just recently went through the hybrid discussions
Mm-hmm.
with the Synod,
Mm-hmm.
and that consultant said something that is parallel to what you're discussing
Mm-hmm.
here, and that is churches that are trying to come out of this pandemic want to use the word go back, and he said, I'm here to tell you there's no such word as going back.
Right.
So the guy that pulls up in front of the homie church and says,
Yeah.
is essentially saying what this consultant said during those hybrid sessions.
Yeah.
There is no back.
Right.
You can't go back because that's gone.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yes. So what Chuck is pointing out, so the council's recently been able to attend these things for the synod by Pastor Dave Daubert, who's in Illinois, and it's about hybrid churches, and it's just this reality now of COVID, and as it continues on with live streaming, like what we're doing right now, and he said when he goes and he consults with these congregations, some people will come to him and say, how do we make it like it was before? And his statement is, there is no before, you can't. It doesn't exist anymore. This is the world now. And it doesn't mean that there's nothing that carries over, but his point is, we're not just going to recapture what was. It's just not there anymore. And that's a harsh reality for some people to accept that doesn't exist. And so, Chuck is tying that into the guy driving up and saying, well, this church used to be this. And the reality is, well, that's not there anymore. The other thing about living organisms, theoretically, is, and I hear this from people too when they'll come talk to me about business stuff or ministry things. The reality is, if we cannot meet, it's such a difficult task because you have to meet the needs of the congregation, but then you also have to meet the needs of people that aren't in the congregation yet. And, any entity that does not change is just happening and does not go with that is holding on to something and it's doomed to fail. Now, my dad's watching, and God bless him. So, Dad, you're gonna yell at this, and that's okay. But I'm going to use you as an example. All right. So I want to say thank you before you yell at me for giving me this example at this moment. So, my dad, like many people and I'm going to be there. I know I'm going to be there. But as he's reached a certain age, my dad can't hear. He can't hear. If you hear what I'm saying right now, Dad, the computer must be turned up very loud, all right? But he can't hear. And so we've for years said, get hearing aids. And his immediate response was always, I don't need hearing aids, I hear fine. Which is a lie. It's a lie. And if it takes this class for you to understand that, Father, then that's what it takes. So he can't hear. So he finally went out and he went to the VA and he got some hearing aids. And he can't make them work for the most part. So Chuck, you're going to have to have a meeting with him. But he refuses to wear them. And so now, because he doesn't wear them a lot, and he hasn't commented yet, so I'm really nervous, is his grandchildren now play little games where they'll talk at certain levels and just to see at what level he can hear them. And I find that to be funny. And he does it, and every once in a while he'll catch him. He's like, I heard everything you said. Now, if he took the approach, which is going to be my approach, which I think I'm going to lean into hearing aids. Like I have no vain sense of myself that here he goes. You're taking it all in, Dad? All right, fantastic. So I'm speaking as a pastor, not as your son. So I love you, and I just need you to understand that. So now if he just said, like, I don't care about hearing what you guys say, that'd be a reason to not have a hearing aid. If he was like, look, I've had to listen to you guys for 77 years, I'm done. This is God's gift to me, so I don't have to listen to all your garbage. Then I go, yeah, all right, don't wear a hearing aid. But if he wants to hear, he needs a hearing aid. Because otherwise, the TV's at like full volume, and everybody else is annoyed, and all that. So a church that says, no, I can still do these things. And other people in the midst of it go, no, you're not doing these things you said you could do. Or if we say, well, I don't really care about doing those things anymore. That might be honest. And I'd actually prefer an honest church that says we don't care about that than a church that says, yeah, no, we do care about that, and then doesn't support, those endeavors. But realize that if, for this example, if he doesn't wear a hearing aid, God love you, if you don't wear a hearing aid, you're going to miss stuff. And it's just a reality. So I don't know. I apologize, Dad. I don't even know how I went off on that tangent. But maybe it was just something I felt like you and I needed to discuss, and this was the only opportunity where I felt safe because there's other people and witnesses. I don't know. So it's change. Nobody likes change. I made this point at a midweek Lenten service. I made this point in a midweek Lenten service 5 years ago, and it was Bill's mom and dad were sitting right there, and I had not prepared anything for the service, so I quickly turned it into, what questions do you guys have about ministry? Because I thought, well, this will take up some time. And Bill's mom said, yeah, why have you changed so many things in the church? And my immediate response was, I don't think I've changed that much. Now, in her perspective, I did. And so we kind of went over some things. And then I said, all right, Ruth, if somebody who attended a Lutheran church 75 years ago came into the church that you have and everything was done the way you think it should be done, would there be any differences from 75 years ago? And she said, right, it might not even be in English. Yeah, it might not even be in English. And if you went back another 75 years, and you went back to Martin Luther's time, or you went back 1,000 years, or you went, and the other thing I shared with her was, I said, my experience is having been at different congregations, I'm used to certain things. But it's different for you guys, but if I install it here, it's just the way I've always done it. It's new to you, but it's not new to me. So, yes, Stanley. All right. Guess what? Adapt. Kathy said they lost the live feed. Is it back up, Kathy? Let's see what Kathy says. So, even though, so I'll say this as I'm waiting. My opinion is the Dolores Mission, if they were not following this vision that, Dolores Mission, if they were not pursuing this vision that Father Greg had and this call that he had, they were still just serving people that they had done for 50 years and it was diminishing size or whatever. It's still doing ministry. It's still doing ministry. It's just, if you were to ask me which ministry I would prefer, I prefer the one that's engaging the community. That would be my preference. It doesn't mean it's not ministry if they do the other thing. It's just a different kind of ministry. So they've chosen, and I guess that kind of comes full circle for chapter 3, and we'll move on to 4. That kind of comes back to, if you have a sense of this is why we do what we do, then that gives you a lens to look through to say, are we matching up with what we said? You know, if Father Greg gets up there and says, we love all these youth who are in gangs, we want to help people that need food, we want to do this and this, and then none of their ministry reflects that, you'd be like, it doesn't matter what he says up there. You know, the ministry's not reflecting it. But they have embraced it, and now when they look at things, when they make decisions as Dolores Mission, they make decisions based on, are we living out what we think our call is right in this place? So chapter 4, just for time purposes, chapter 4, what is that? What, do you have you just combing or?
When he started there, now we're reading after it's been accomplished.
Yeah, it's been accomplished, yeah.
And sort of like I said about the criers and the non-criers,
Right.
he's writing about his success.
He is writing about his successes, yeah.
And we have no idea from what he's written
Right.
how hard the journey was
Oh, yeah.
and how long it took to get the train filled up.
Yeah.
And I guess in looking at the usual congregation, there are so many different avenues that people want to pursue.
Right.
There's no main goal in the parlance of some years ago in business. The overarching goal is not bought into by everybody.
Right.
Everybody has
Little silo. Yeah.
And I guess from the churches I've been in, the ones that have a goal that is truly visible and countable, and not by how many people are
Right.
and
Right.
doing a budget, but we're doing something
Right.
that involves more than a few people.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes, from what I've seen, that makes a tremendous difference in the vitality of the church.
I would agree. So if you didn't catch that online, to summarize it, what Lauren said is having that, and correct me if I don't capture this the right way, Lauren, having a solid sense of who you are, what you're doing, and then actually living that, like the congregations that have this almost like tangible, and not just putting butts in the pews and filling up the coffers and, you know, getting yourself out of purgatory and all that good stuff, then that makes a huge difference in the vitality of a congregation. And I agree with that wholeheartedly, because the congregation then does not exist for itself. It exists for the other, whoever the other is. And it gives, and I can only speak for myself here, but I'm trying to figure out a pastoral way to say this. So believing in God's grace, I already believe I'm saved. And I don't even like to use that language because it sounds Baptist and, further down the line for me, like saying I was saved. I'm not worried, like, what happens after I die, I'm not concerned with that. I have a faith that a certain thing's going to happen, and that faith, the reality of that faith is, if I'm right, awesome, I'm not in charge of that. If I'm wrong, yeah, I wasn't in charge of that either, so it is what it is. But that's not my focus. So my focus is here, not necessarily just the congregation. My focus is the world. And people of my generation, I think, or people 2 generations younger than me if you're Kim, because Kim's 23, right? You're 23? Yeah, if you don't see him in church as much anymore, which at the same time, and I think this is true, I make generalizations sometimes. From what I've heard from people, I have no stats to back this up, like Kiwanis attendance is down. Rotary Club, like they're not getting a bunch of young people. I mean, they're like these certain institutions don't have the same type of membership that they had, 50 years ago or what have you. Is people in the generation that I grew up in and younger, I think they want to be able to change the world or their community. I think that they want something that they can do. So to say that they're not willing to be active in church, that's possible. I think it has more to deal with, like, what is your church doing that makes them want to be active there? So I can't tell you how many fun runs I have not attended, or stuff like people, like I always see stuff on social media like, we're raising money and we're gonna ride a bike to Cedar Point, and I'm like, how are you doing that? Unless there's a motor on your bike. But then 2, I'll see all these different charities, these different events, and younger people are like, we want to do this. And I think part of it is because there's this tangible thing where they're like, I'm making a difference. And I don't see that they believe they can make that much of a difference in the church, which is sad to me, because I think we can. I just think we need momentum to do it. And it comes back to that change and all that stuff. And Melissa made a point earlier that I would be remiss if I did not come back to it. And I think if I get this wrong, Melissa, retype it in. But with the leadership thing, and maybe she's just heard me complain too much. Yes, that's what they want, Melissa. So now she's giving me a different comment, which is throwing off my earlier comment, Melissa, and I have ADHD, so this is difficult. So they want to see the church in action. That was her most recent comment. They want to see the church in action. And if a church primarily offers a 1-hour service on the weekend, that's not a church in action. I mean, it is a church in action, but from their perspective, it might not be a church in action. Even though worship is the center of what we do and it fuels us to go and do other things, they don't see it as that. But earlier, what I believe you said, Melissa, was something along the lines of, you get, something I learned when I was working on my MBA was something I knew before but didn't have the words to express. The reality that in leadership, it's not something as easy as me coming in and saying, this is what we're going to do. Because I can do that, but the reality is if I turn around and start walking in this direction, if no one's following me, because it's not like you work for me, it's not like I'm like, you're going to follow me or I'm going to fire you. You go, great, I'll go somewhere else. I don't need to be here. So that leadership, sometimes people have to share that vision too of what the leadership is saying. I think Dolores' mission with all of his success stories. And I'm sure if you had the opportunity, if I had the opportunity to sit down with him and say, tell me all the things that went wrong, he was like, I could write 20 books on that, would be my guess. But I think every once in a while you see these moments in the world where he lined up with the right congregation that was kind of on the brink of this maybe already and had some people, and it was like the perfect match, and it just exploded. Was God, yeah. Is God, I don't know, is Jesus taking the wheel? Is he doing, I don't know. I don't listen to country music, but I know there's a lot of different variations on that. Yeah, so you want, something I shared with a pastor that I interviewed today for that other thing I do on Facebook is, I told him this, and you can judge me all you want on this. It's just a fact. It's a reality in my life. I am not, as of this point in my life, I am not concerned at all with God saying to me at the end of my life, well done, good and faithful servant. It's not on my radar. Because one, I think probably because I feel like I'm a sinner, and so I'm saved by grace, so it's not going to be well done and good and faithful servant. Plus, I know myself. But what I am concerned with is when I die, I want my kids to say, he lived this kind of life, and he believed in these kind of things, and he taught us these things, and he did these things. That's, if I had to pick between the two, I'm not going to say that, sorry. But that's my concern. My concern is I want to be authentic, and I want to have my life have meant something. And if my kids can look and go, he was a good person. He tried these things. He made a bunch of mistakes. He was one time classified by his wife as the world's grossest man. These are all things, but ultimately, he taught us about love. He loved people. He taught us about compassion. He had compassion. That's what I want. That's my standard. And I've not done a great job of it up to this point in my life. And I want to do better going forward. So I want to be self-aware of that. So chapter 4 is called What? It's actually not called What. It is called Mumbles in the Church. The title of that, if you're at home, everyone's answer was, Water, oil, fire. It's okay. Flame is so much different than fire, people. Waiting, bring the claws out for that one. Water, oil, flame. Not fire, flame. Forgive me, Lord, I have sinned. Now and in the time of my death. All right, so that water, oil, fire, flame. Oh, I did it again. God just making a mockery of me now. All right. Water, oil, flame is a reference to the sacrament of baptism. And so you have the water, the anointing with oil, and you have the flame, whether you look at that in a symbolic way of the Holy Spirit or whether you look at that in the sense of, the candle that we light. So I know one of the stories in there that really stuck out to me in how it was handled. And there's more crying here, Joanne. I apologize. I wish there wasn't. I'm trying to find stories where I already shared the one. All right, so I'll do that one first. We'll do no crying and then we'll move to crying. So the no crying story was the individual. Yes, I'll get to that in a second, Nancy. So it ties into this. So the great encounter with the father wound is every homeboy's homework. So the point that for a lot of these youth, a father figure was just not present. Or if the father figure was present, they wished the father had not been present. And so you get the one story, and I don't remember his name, but you get the one story I alluded to earlier, where the youth, where his father walked out on him on his 6th birthday. And the saddest part of that story that might have made you cry is what? What was the kid's approach on his birthday? What did he do? Can anyone remember?
I cried till I was 9.
He said he cried till he was 9. Before that, though,
He wouldn't cut the cake.
he refused to let them cut the cake. I'm waiting till my dad gets home. I'm waiting minutes, hours, dad never shows up. And they cried till he was 9, and then he said, and I never cried again. And so like the fact that he never cried again, now he doesn't cry, that's sadder than him crying. That is, he has closed himself off to the possibility of he will not, my take on it is he refuses to make himself vulnerable anymore, to put himself in a position where he can be hurt like that. So it's just not going to happen. So that story, and then you have the story of the brothers and the ones getting ready for his baptism. But he's going to be baptized, and in addition to getting baptized, he's timed it up. He wants his baptism to happen, I believe, the same weekend he gets his GED or something along those lines. And then, since we read the book, we remember the story. The day before this baptism is going to take place, the day before, the brother gets shot and killed. And he goes and he has to decide, like, he doesn't think he's going to do that. He's going to go, but then he remembers he has the baptism, so he goes. And he doesn't tell the brother until after the baptism. Does anyone remember the brother's response? Other than crying, because we've already established that. Other than crying, because Father Greg says there was the typical response to hearing that your brother had been killed would be anger, revenge. And he says this guy, I don't know if it was name, because he said he changed names a lot, so I don't know if it's George or something like that. Is it George? He says George does what? Does none of that. And what is Father Greg's, what guess does he make as to why he doesn't go the route of absolute anger and rage and revenge? Online, you can give the answer too. Why does he not go with that natural response of revenge?
His commitment to the baptism.
Yeah. Bill said his commitment to the baptism. So he's leaning into that, the commitment of this is who I am now as a baptized child of God. He's choosing to go forward. He realizes that he's made these advancements as far as getting his GED and then the baptism, and he decides that he's going to walk forward with those things. And I don't know if it's tied to this story or not. His sins were forgiven. And I don't know if it's tied to this story or not, but there's at one point in chapter 4, because it goes with the flame part, not the fire, is he talks about the brilliance of one of his favorite pieces of scripture, which is when Jesus says, "You are the light of the world." And he talks about why he loves Jesus saying, "You are the light of the world." Does anybody remember that part of the chapter? If you find it and you have a page number, whether you're at home or here, shout it out or type it out. A page number, I know it's chapter 4. I know it is. Where he talks about you are the light of the world when Jesus says that. And he says there's something about Jesus saying that inspires him, that moves him, that kind of directs him. I will give no money but a high five to the first person who finds. Nancy has, it says, the commitment he has made water, oil, flame, has taken all his grief, pure, Seymour. Resembles the heart. Yes, oh, so Nancy gives that, the other part, while you guys are looking for that too, the commitment that George made is that now, oh, such a beautiful line. His grief is pure and true and more resembles the heartbreak of God. So God's response in that moment isn't to exact revenge. In that moment that he realizes his brother has died, and when the brother did die, God's reaction in that moment, Father Greg envisions, is that God's heart is broken. And so this brother moves into that as opposed to into revenge. So, did anybody find the light of the world? Has anybody ever heard that part of Scripture before? Is this new to anyone? It's the last page of the chapter. 108. I'm taking her word. Page 108, Kathy. There you go. 108 for the light of the world. What is beautiful about the light of the world reference? What is the point Father Greg makes?
That one day, if you are more perfect, you will have
Listen to Kim from North Olmsted. Yes, so the point, say it again, Kim. So the point of it is what? When Jesus says you're the light of the world, what is he saying?
He's saying that one day, if you are more perfect and really try hard, you'll be the light. He doesn't say that.
Yeah. So it's not being the light of the world. Jesus just makes a statement. You are the light of the world. It's unconditional, as Nancy puts, yes. Jesus simply says, it's not about, well, if you do this, then you can be the light of the world. Or if you stop doing that, you can be the light of the world. It is, you're the light of the world. Sue says, we sang that scripture. Oh, you did? That's fantastic. Maybe we sang it here. I know. I have no memory. Once a service, I apologize. Once a service is over, worship service is over on a weekend, my brain resets and I don't remember anything usually from the previous weeks. Yeah, so being the light, shine, Jesus, shine. I know that's part of it with Transfiguration Sunday. There's a lot of the light references. But there's something, how often in your life, and this is a theme that comes up over and over again in this book, and it definitely came up the first week, is how often do you truly feel like you are enough? And it's such an easy thing for me to look at all of you and say, you're enough. And if someone looks at me and goes, you're enough, I go, I don't know. I don't think he's watching, one of my good friends, Andrew, one of my closest friends, Andrew, who's a pastor up in Rochester, New York, he will, when there's trouble, just shine. Yep. He'll watch services sometimes, and you'll Andrew, every once in a while, if you pay attention to our Facebook page, you'll see this, it says Andrew Gukin, and he'll put like 3 or 4 responses, and like he'll put hearts up and stuff, and I'm just like, dude, stop. But he'll send me texts sometimes, and he'll be like, man, I love you so much. You were so great. And my immediate response to him is, shut up. Every time. And he's like, no, I'm serious. And I'm like, dude, don't lie to me. You know I have self-esteem issues. I don't like it when you mess with me. And he's like, no, I really, and he could tell me over and over and over again, yes, the dogs are barking. So we have 5 minutes. He could tell me over and over again, I'm not going to say that Japanese word, Nancy, but yes. Living in a deep sense of being cherished. The poem from years, or from chapters past, behold the one holding you and loving you, I believe. Something along, and cherishing you.
But it's the word is M-A.
Yeah, that Japanese word is M-A, yeah. And So it's so weird because I know this about myself, I have no problem telling other people how much they're loved. But accepting it myself is one of the hardest things in the world for me to do. And to the point where anybody who seems like they love themselves too much, I'm like, yeah, there's something wrong with that person. You need to have a healthy sense of guilt and shame built into you so that, to keep you honest and humble. But that, and I think that's why he says it over and over in the book, because we need to hear it over and over again. Because we can hear it over and over again and we still don't always believe it. And yeah, so this reality that you're cherished, that God's heart breaks for you, breaks for me, is something that I think we should all meditate on or carry with us and, really try to live into this reality that we are really, really loved. And we're loved not because of the stuff we do, but because this is who we are. God loves us. Actually, I would even reverse that and say that's who God is. So anything else from 4? Because what I'm going to do is I'm not going to end the class, but I'm going to stop real quick. And since we have a couple minutes left, are there any comments, questions before we wrap up? Anything else from chapter 4? Do you think there's going to be more crying in the book next week? I can guarantee you there is. I can guarantee. Oh, chapter 4. It goes with what I just said. Ha ha! Thank you, Jesus, or whoever just said that to me. All right. Rob says, Jesus says those that follow him are light. Yes, exactly, Rob. He says it exactly himself. So Father Greg spends this whole book talking about how much people are loved and that you're cherished, and he gives all these examples. And he talks about when he's in Montana with 2 of the guys, and they have to go and they have a chapel service, and they announce to everybody, oh, hey, just FYI, Father Greg has leukemia, so we're going to lay our hands on him. And Father Greg's response to having people lay hands on him is what? I don't want this. I don't want to be the center of attention. I don't want all these people coming up praying for me like that. And, that's one of the hurdles I've had to get over, or still learning to get over as a pastor. There are certain people, everyone's different, but there are certain people when, a little thing happens, or, something that I might not consider to be an emergency, like, they're like, oh, no, we want the pastor to be there. And the reason I have a hurdle with that is because I remember when I had my appendix taken out in 2007, an emergency as it usually is, and Melissa comes in and she's like, okay, so what do you want me? I'm in my first church. She's like, so who do I have to notify? I said, notify Leanne, who was a church secretary, and tell no one. I don't want anyone know I'm in the hospital. And I was like, I don't want anyone visiting me from the church. I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to entertain or minister or just even be in that state and have somebody there with me. I don't want it. So even Father Greg, for as great as he is at professing it, he too, it just makes him uncomfortable to feel all that love. And now he does give, and we'll end with this, he does receive, he says that the best blessing prayer that he receives, which we won't repeat it because we're in church and God can hear what we're saying in here, but not when we go in the parking lot. But he receives the blessing, the prayer from the one guy who's with him, and to clean it up for social media, the guy through tears says, I love you so effing much. That's like, all I know is I love you so effing much. And he was like, yep, that's it. And I think also in chapter 4, I'm going to say this because nobody's turned off my mic yet, is when Mike Wallace says you'd be an a-hole if you don't keep doing it, and the guy was like, I was going to kill Mike Wallace, and Father Greg goes like, who hasn't want to take a swing at Mike Wallace? Everybody has. So, but just that reality, that's that connection that he has with these individuals, that I don't even want to say he's a father figure, because it's more than that. He is the embodiment of goodness in the world to most of these people. All right, you all did fantastic. All right, this is something which you guys are going to get now. I'm going to tell the rest of the congregation next week. If you guys can disseminate the information if you want to, it's up to you. But not next week, but the 2 week, go get your granddaughter. You already know. Let's go away. You're taking up my time, even waving at me right now. Be safe. There's class, there'll be class. We'll be meeting in person next week, but then for March 21st and March 28th, I'm going to have to get your information, and we're going to have to meet via Zoom, because on March 17th, I'm having surgery to repair part of my hip, torn labrum and an impingement, a hip impingement, so I'm going to be out for a few weeks. Yeah, the fact that I'm even telling you this, I'm only telling you because my wife and Heather are both like, you need to tell people in churches, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to tell them. So we're still going to have class. It'll just be via Zoom, because I'll be having it from home, because I'll be, like I said, I'll be having surgery a week from Thursday. So just be aware of that. It's going to happen, and it'll be great. All right, so good job. If you're here tonight, God bless you. Be safe. If you have anything you need to talk to me about, you can come up. If you're watching from home, God love you. Be safe. And until next time, know how much you are loved. Bye-bye.